Great show today, all about listening with understanding versus listening without any selectiveness at all. Hearing could be just sensation, couldn't it? Where listening is more selective. It's no matter really what's said, who's listening, how are you listening to understand? It's really likely, of course, in life to gain ever more what's ahead, that you could be focused on understanding versus, oh, I'm not focused on understanding anything. Who's listening really is active in a mode of this. And if that mode is, no, I don't want to understand, then no matter what's said, that person who's not receptive isn't going to understand too much. So if you're listening, of course, what's to understand and to make an effort to do? It's from the 60s onward, if you think about it, how family and also extended family and customers all faced face-to-face it was, and nobody was necessarily divided by any wall, like family court has, that's torn the family apart by purpose, because that's how you collapse a nation, isn't it? You get rid of all the fathers, so there's no father that helped educate any children, and kids are being taken without any claim whatsoever. And so the dangers really is kept in the hands of C.B. Cower at the criminal banking cartel of a one world order. And that system really could just turn on or off any service, yes? And so we see that, don't you? That happened in Nepal, of course. It's happened in Vietnam as well. Gosh, you'd think that we would have left the Vietnamese alone a little, wouldn't you? But no. Some reports between 80 and 20 million customers just got shut down, their bank accounts and things in Vietnam. And where was the referendum? Yes? And was that selected by we the people, or is it just a theft of forgery by burglarisation and by cyber warfare that's going on you, that just cut all your accounts off, yes? And some fictional body that's really not from the land whatsoever, but a political body instead. It's really a crime. And to have merged ledgers with an enemy corporation, nobody gave permission for that at all. And is that what happened before 2020 kicks off? And why 2020, the kickoff? And who really is into and what's not, and you're taking new information aboard and you're ignoring to try hard, of course, unless rapport is nothing much that's said could be heard or seen generally, okay? So somebody has to be listening with, standing and to be active where this is. So through experiential learning that we used to have a lot of, what have we got now when you've just got some religion where people are holding up some handheld idol instead and just swiping that? There's no, response back that's from someone living where you are. And so is it that people are spending far less time today than ever before, that nobody's in front of anyone and except your screen, and people just are glued to fiction mainly? So if less time is spent in social responsiveness and experiential learning is isolated more society, and the mass media is just monopolised. And so with civic confinement and entrapment is, do you have any more social activity, or is that just time spent with a device? So in every realm, of course, life today and time spent with the family has been reduced. That's right, since the 60s. Might have been 3 or 4% that somebody spent in time, like listening to some machine or something back then. And today that's like 90% or more. So it's a reduction in time that's radical. And the screen doesn't interact with you. It's dead. So, you did have a soundboard in the past, but where's your soundboard today, you see? So looking at the value of listening and understanding versus listening and not understanding, you can't convince anyone who just is not interested to understand. That's going to stop that person from understanding. And they have a bias, and so something isn't receptive within themselves. So looking at really what's experiential learning and play activity, it's really okay where rules are and you are in a playful setting where time has been suspended. And but isn't playfulness and your social capacity necessary for your social life and to be completed more? And who's winning overall? And what's your game where things are that's being played? Is it just like the US versus them? And one winner, one loser? What sort of a game is that? How does your play apparent with anyone else's and your screen today further isolate you? That's a good question. Do you step from the past by letting it go? What does all of that isolation where you're spending time every day pass where you're just on your cell phone, yes, and not anything new? But is that just a religion now, as a religious practice? Is that now sort of what's making time up that's spent alone, apparent, to be just not in the now at all, but just in the past or future, but of no certain future? Of course, totally not. Letting you listen to understand everything. Everything is just being muted out and bits to have listened to, but not really heard. And it can't be much, can it? Just a faint voice more for what is another view. And so to what sort of biased outright, of course, it is because no perfect detachment is, and it's pretty late, of course, for you or anyone else in this field if you're not more eye-aware as you can be versus if you're not. It's really a seen single sound response back, what real life is. And it's just like in the past, people were sent, weren't they, to a column on the knees, and that was pretty neat, you'd agree, pretty messy actually, because you'd look around and see that you were made prey, to the natives and everything that could just knock you off. And you'd have to pray, wouldn't you? So you'd be prey. So to be acted on and acting where prey is and you're just the prey, it's felt, of course, where somebody's invaded. And don't you think that's what happened when people all of a sudden settled on a new shoreline? And because is it that's how what happened and where we are today? And actually, isn't that just the recent past also going on? If you were asked to pray, yes, for a lord and in a foreign land, and you owed allegiance to your lord, and that was far away across the waters, so you could get trained to pray, be prey, and have prey, and that could be just a habit. And so, if somebody felt less invested, is today the result of a far more that nobody really is listening properly from being earnest and a care to understand another. Of course, the work internal that you do ever more is the work inside. And where are you now? And is that a match for what's outside? Somebody's got a good balance where that is. Whole brain functioning pattern is a preferred mode of being where you're gaining eye awareness and you've followed instruction to rid all the internal dialogue that was and all that felt prey, that you were only prey, just like a rabbit or plenty blood boy. So it's an internal polarized dialogue that's just been regurgitating from some screen learning. And couldn't it be just that nothing unknown, but just totally false, an internal driven dialogue? And is that you not turning self on or off where internal dialogue is? And what's within where you are? Could you be listening if you've got your own internal dialogue? And can listening be if you've got something precognitive that apparently is science but's not? And so it's just like shaping whatever is new that comes in, but completely not categorizing it right. So if you've really got a function as water does, or a road, and you can pass on that, and you can deliver your services and goods, that's not being speculated in, isn't this common law? And not being a prey, of course, and having to be left with just some handheld idol. So to be in the top 20%, you've really got to go past where you're stepping now, and you've got to get into this now. It's your time spent where living repose is otherwise, and mystery is more serendipity, isn't it? And you could have mystery where things are and have a full cosmology inside. But being receptive to learning is really level one. That means, I need to learn something. If you are comfortable where you are, that's where most of your family members are. And that's the reason why most people kind of feel it pretty boring when they go home to connect with their family. Because most people go, I'm comfortable where I am. And that's called zero-level learning. So learning level one is, I'm not really content where I am and I need to grow. And then you're in learning level one. Learning level two is, wow, wait a minute, I need to have opportunity to grow. Good. And now you've got learning level three, which really is how do you gain various strategy where your learning is. Learning level four is really a self-actualized production where responsiveness is where your environment is. And you can note how sound life is. You're living transparent, where the world is more inside and it matches everything on the outside. So the journey really is, what's the path that you're on? Has it got a heart in the path? Is it a heart's path? And what has happened where you could define what's I, for instance, and what's you? Most people, they've never defined who I is or who you is, and we and them. And what debt speculation to the future is under negative inductance, which costs way too much to continue to uphold that. And it's all collected by the corpse that feeds a few silent trust owners of the corpse, not you or I. So if you follow .arm and the arm itself as a currency, Eclipse really is a movement that's about getting a usury less currency. So what's sort of biased outright, it's no form of perfect detachment, is it? And who's late where all of that is in the field, it's who is really more I-aware versus who isn't I-aware that's capable. Of course, it's really seen as a single sound response back in real life. And if it was just that you were sent on the colon on the knees, it was really a neat way for you to agree how others might see you far away and just be called to pray to. So to be acted upon as prey, and others who felt they were invading them. You see, you've got nobody's going to say that pattern isn't something that's existing. The Eclipse movement is about non-usury currency, positive inductive in the golden age. If you go to be more in an alliance of law movement, the arm, and what's the cost of upholding the past, it's just way too much to uphold. That has to be changed. You can't keep going along with tyranny and being pledged, and so you're latched. So who has any right after that? Under a contract, a parent, and forgery and fraudulence and pledging. It's really not popular, of course, that you'd get your bank accounts frozen, is it? And did anybody agree to have a bail-in? That means, they can just come along and have collected anything to pay the bank's bill. So nobody gave permission for any of that. So in recent times, of course, you could see how dangerous the digital ID is, and how that's been set up by a foreign concern outside the nation. It's not anything that anybody was given to look at. And how safe is that, where control over the nation is in currency and it isn't from we the people? So many millions of accounts is generated instantly, and it's falsified And how do you know that's not so? Many have taken advantage to suddenly grow themselves, didn't they? And you saw how they did this, didn't you? You saw lots of people buy bots. That's right. And to give themselves some false condition that millions apparently listening to them when that's not the case whatsoever. So if you're getting a service that's accepted and that's moral, isn't that an ethical stance? And do you take advantage where anything is, where you're not shorting others and where the younger ones are, where they would have a downfall, and you didn't participate in the system, did you? That would be the downfall of the younger ones, yes? Well, I think you did if you're just in bed with the bankers where housing has been out priced way beyond what it should be fully. It only took 3 years to be able to have your house in the 60s, and now it's going to take you 50 years. This is just stupid. It's just communistic crap. It's outright wrong. So all of these charges have their own strange attractor, don't they, that gets set up because some charge started to be, and you've got to have those charges discharged. And this is a real reset. It's zeroing out the debt and discharging the charges. So under CBCO, a system, the service provider only, and you just being a customer, and you're the last in turn in line before they're serving themselves. And that's the reason why ARM and the Eclipse movement has come along. That's a usury-less currency. And what's positively inducted in the golden age, you see, you could have flying craft personalised, of course, and you can give what's an alliance of law movement. That's the ARM, ALM. It costs otherwise way too much to continue to uphold the past under negative inductance. That will be just crazy to continue on. Why? Because, like I said, there is nothing ever made for the interest. There's only the principle that's made in the money mechanics, and always, never not, the interest is a shortfall, and now war has to be to collect all of that. You see? So under negative inductance, you only have war. That's it. And so did you and I set the currency up? No. Well, we should. That's very important. How come that's not what should be talked about? And that is the money mechanics. Don't tell me that the currency that a nation has, if you are not thinking about this, is probably the biggest demise of a nation. So if you don't go along with peony and slavery and being under a latched contract as a citizen, not a man or a woman, but a citizen, which, what's that? It's fraudulent. It's pledging for what's totally not popular whatsoever, and you get your bank accounts frozen. Wow. How bad is that? Do you see what I mean? That's crazy. So in recent times, you can see how dangerous the digital ID is, all connected to, hey, got to get your shot. But isn't some people just getting millions of dollars of settlement because they were told, get the shot or you get fired? That happened to a lot of people, didn't it? And what's not safe where something is? And how much control is there over a date of a man? A mandy date. Isn't a mandy date something which you're supposed to have consented to? And is this supposed to come from we the people? And did you select your, someone that's actually speaking for you? Or no, that was elected. So that's not selected whatsoever. But you're supposed to select, not elect. So many millions of accounts are generated, aren't they? And are you going to tell me that none of those are falsified? Yes? And so are you going to say that nobody's taken advantage of those sorts of things when you can see that's going on? and what's moral and is of an ethical stance. You see, have you got a device which really is not giving proper thyroid attention, or it's actually changing the type of thyroid attention that you have toward information? What's the physical attention that's like where somebody's praying, in the past, praying, today, of course, to handheld idols instead, yeah? And so what's fictional? Isn't this about you properly taking action? I think it is. And so, I've been just talking today a little bit about, hey, how about taking action? Because, a rock and a rabbit's not going to be able to launch any action, is it? And cyber warfare, you're going to say that's transparent. Oh, yes, it is. You know everything about that. It's like, bull dust. And who's the private bloke who has just created treason against all of us by owning a company that's private, that's being operated and paid for, and it really is like an agency operated that's outside the nation, not inside. And so if you've got earthquake equipment to make earthquakes, you've got equipment to weather control, and you explode things underwater like the volcano, and it produces 10% more moisture in the atmosphere than it was before, and you take policy to war on one corpse and it's off against another, and hey, that's the black and white checkered board, isn't it? Yes? So it's very apparently spiritual that you're told what it is that's to be going on with you. This is a religion that's above the other 5 religions. It's really to do with you having to accept that might you have to do some wrong to get right. And this is just totally immoral. So, like weather manipulation and food manipulation, don't tell me that that's not what's been going on. Look overall, and you can see that's going on. So how about stop right now that stuff? Where does that all come from? Not you or I. You see? So 24 years have gone by where dry, cold, and eventual a grand solar minimum is to be, in the year 2050. So what did we just say? A dry, cold is eventual. That's right. And a grand solar minimum is coming up by 2050. In other words, we're coming into a ice age, a mini ice age. So you don't think that's going to happen, a cold spell, and you don't think that that's kind of like being manipulated, force manipulated. You don't think that's going to cause everybody's weather bill, and it's going to just be depopulation for sure. You've got so much precipitation, it's all going to just dump over the North America and the eastern seaboard more. And that precipitation is controlled, and the wind is controlled, and it causes a great Arctic blast that people to perish, and dams overflow. And it's purposeful, a force multiplied weapon. A dam built slows the earth down, doesn't it? A big dam. An atomic bomb that goes off slows the earth's rotation down, doesn't it? And equipment to create the earth's quackery by manipulation, it affects all of us. And don't you think that who's doing that, that's just outright communistic? Yes? So it's common law, and it's proper acting, not a scamdemic, and it's a social compact that selected a Republic of Peace. That's right. That's the social compact. Good. So, it's the meaning that you can't have double oath takers. Can't have double oath takers. You can't have a guild that has an oath to serve someone far away and be under oath to you and I, and be just jumping between all the floors, the 3 floors, which there's supposed to be a separation of powers, but how can that be where you've got gilded members running between all the floors and they are not under oath to you or I? So it's because of prime dissidence and associated emotional factors that you are used to subtly be a resistance, and you've got a transferring over, and you're going to have no cyber security, that's for sure. It's going to be used outright against you, just like it was where the Uyghurs were. Why don't you look into that picture? Can a corporation feel or listen? No, it's dead. If equipment was made and sold and used to enslave others, is that just overstepping your rights? Yes, it is. Where's that cyber security that life could be used so your private information was stolen? Is that cyber security? No, it's not. Did you and I have a referendum or something to create that? No, we didn't. And so somebody just privately jumped into bed with some patsy who wants to own everything, all the fusion centres. And is that Google behind most all of those fusion centres? So how's listening if cyber warfare is designed just as a word salad to you? You know, you don't think that that's going on where people's handheld idols are, just getting a lot of word salad? Could you say that a Jewish president versus let's see, a Mohammedan president, or we're the first president that's a Krishna worshipper, but we've got the first Jewish president. It's like, well, I guess we've had Christian presidents or something, have we? But are these people all Christians? Because a lot of them actually were married. I mean, First Lady wasn't really a First Lady per se, but you've got president and you've got executive terms, and how basically what's adopted more isn't to do with religion, but no, we're going to be making it a religion. How good is that? Wow. So you'll have instead of a civic function, which is meaning you're under a contract, you're going to have a clerical function instead, and you're under contract. So you could say that relations where it's whatever the religion is, it's by the living in an area. Is this representing the vast majority of people? And where's your ancestralness if somebody says, oh, well, no, I've got Semitic blood? Does it work to have a view where your understanding is you've got a cohesive violence that's corrupted being done under the colour of law to accomplish third-party weaponization? And isn't that the concern for cyber security? So if you've got ancestors that are Jewish, or, oh, no, you don't have ancestors, okay, but you follow the Jewish religion, okay. Well, what about people who are married into families that use the Torah? Of course, you've got Jewish people listening and understanding, and you've got people in eye awareness, of course, as well. Got a celebration as Yiddish and mixed European ancestry, and the astonishing capacity to be allowed, of course, to serve under C.B. Cower, and that group might represent next to not much of any group in a nation, but suddenly you've got, people from a nepotistic condition set up to be in power. So keep in mind, Jewish beloveds sort of were engaged where the Bolshevik Revolution was in Russia, and the amount of these people that were in power at the time was really about like a little less than 1% of the population that would be related to, and most of these people were Jewish. And so 1% of the Russian population total occupied all the senior heads of power back then, where the body politic was. And what happened? Did you have a look and see? Do you know what happened where this was? If you look at, the bull of the buy or the buy of the bull, and you look at the Schofield bull of a buy or buy of a bull, suddenly it's written, but it wasn't before. Hey, Jerusalem is your hometown if you're Christian. And so you were taught through that bull of a buy. And Schofield, once you look into Schofield himself, wasn't a very reputable bloke. Isn't this that what you're taught to do is to serve Jerusalem? And isn't that the Knights of Malta and the Knights of Jerusalem, like the Swiss and the Malta, all set up to be for the Vaticanus? And how does that serve anyone except the C.B. Cower view? So if you emphasize activity, listening to understand, it's a deep contrasting with any spiritual deafness for sure. And healing is highlighting of a difference between what's just merely to you auditory reception and true comprehension that's often applied more to be sort of resistant, typically, to any spiritual truth. So if you describe where you or I are as we're the people physically listening and aware, and not anyone under some sedated condition, if you don't really grasp what the situation is overall and the spiritual meaning on a heart's path versus one that's really hardened otherwise, and it's just totally preventing true insight. Yes? So don't ever hear without listening. It's active, which you are in your understanding. And it's really a social compact that's selected evermore by a republic at peace instead. How about that? Good. But meaning if you can't have a double oath taker, you can't accept who's got a mental set that's not understanding. And because of a prime dissidence where that is, where you've got people who've under a double oath. This is just off the chart wrong. So by associating emotional factors, which is used and subtle, like resistance transfer that goes on, and you don't tell me that that's not, cybersecurity gone wrong. So how do you have cybersecurity when a monopoly is imposed? I'm going to ask you that. How do you and I have cybersecurity when a monopoly is behind that, and that's not come from your nation whatsoever? So can a corporation feel and listen to you? No, it's dead. So can equipment just be sold and used to enslave others? Yes. Can cybersecurity be your life turned around just so that you're just being turned on or off? Can you say that we have a Jewish president and now we've got consecutive terms, and because something is adopted, because isn't this your Christianness or maybe your Jewishness? If you could say that relations were Jewish by religion, or who's living in an area that's got Semitic blood, does that work? Is this the view that affects your understanding? What's the cohesive violence that corrupts where the colour of law is to accomplish third-party weaponization, you see? And isn't this a sign of security? It's the ancestors of Jewish religion, and that people could have married and where things are. But, of course, you've got the Schofield Bible, like we talked about, just coming up here. And it's really not any proper condition that's gone on. So it's common law that you and I will have requested and got a social compact that you and I selected, and we selected a republic at peace. Otherwise, you've really got a condition that's going on that none of us gave any consent to. So don't be ever hearing and not listening, yes? Be active more in understanding, and yet be eye-aware more and have more this rare transparency where you've got this inner silence and you've got transparency there, and this is what's behind your seeing. This is not just perceiving, because you're not perception at all, but you who is real is really aware of perception, you see. So you're the master of self, and you have this self-dedication to this ongoing meditation, walking, sitting, living. And is this how you look at the outside and is everything more as it is on the inside? So balance is. Otherwise, maybe you should be paying attention to whole brain functioning, patterning, and languaging, where you've got a JC quanta, which is a job constant in a quantum, and everything adds up like it's supposed to, and not just left to be ever seeing from what's nebulous, from what's past, and what's fraudulent, but perceiving and listening, but not hearing and never understanding. Otherwise, look, it's really what are you looking at that's deep, that might turn everything around, so that you're more forgiven, of course, where everything is. Hearing is sensation, it's perception, yet not who you are in eye awareness. You're not perception, but you're this which is real, that's aware of perception. So hearing versus just actually listening and being active in understanding. It's a real crucial difference between what the physical act of listening is and a simple hearing. And sound is mental spiritual act of listening, to be aware more. So listening is to be like active, of course, in communication. And what's the definition of communication? Is that the response that you're given back? Yes, it is. That's the agreement. That's the understanding. So psychological mutism, yeah, that's where selective restrictive violation is in logic, and it raises conscious objection typically. And most of us are unaware of what is not their own and not another's preferred mode of sorting information. It's the fastest way to destabilize a nation is with psyops, isn't it? You're thinking that there isn't any reason to destabilize a nation or get somebody behind some act, and so you got to go and get a psyops done. And so, oh my God, so crazy. So you're stopping trust, and you're not getting any trust of neighbours. And isn't that the grand overall design? None of us, we the people anywhere, decided that. So nothing could help where arms reach outside self. You can't trust where help is not, and something is just hidden. That's obfuscating the truth. So to fight each other instead, and no true adversary, but a false one made up, primed, and you rely on getting a service to survive. And all of these things are to distract you, yes, from the money mechanics going on right now. So the only horizontal attention that takes over from what is vertical above, it's the vertical actual that goes unnoticed. It's listening that's active engagement where the world is, and it's designed more to have a recent, wouldn't you say, population genocide? Yes. Set up by C.B. Kawa system? Yes. And so all dependency where weaponized artificial worm spaces are, and drafted under a C.B. Kawa communistic bent until the system of all we the people withdraw support from that, and you've got a proper social compact instead, and it's something which we've selected ourselves because you've got a server which is serving all of us and not owned by one group, but owned by everyone who has an account instead. And this is a republic at peace. And now you've got .arm as a ledger, as a public trust instead of a chain of a block. So if 460,000, I think, children go missing every year in America, you've got, wow, that's a lot. Wow, that's just too many, isn't it? Yeah? The cost of continuing on with the system that's existing is way too much to uphold. You've got 120,000 missing in Canada, apparently. In England, maybe some 25,000, I'm not sure, smaller nations. But, of course, that figure can be including all the runaway children and something very sinister. Of course, don't tell me that the family court hasn't had anything to do with that. It sure has. It's just corrupt to the hilt. And all of these organisations that have worked for the family court. The family court has attacked everyone under communism, and which is one of their planks, isn't it? Yes. So you've got big money and Davos, yeah, and you've got the WEF, spelt backwards. That's the few that meet in secrecy, no minutes taken. That's not We the People, because anything from We the People has got to have transparency, like an Article 3 or Article 4 court. The people are welcomed into this versus, no, you're shut out, you can't hear anything. So what's that? That's not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is an Article 3 or Article 4 court. Get that through your skull, please. And so it's a system that's set up in the family court. Otherwise, that has just got you under corpus delicti. What's that mean? It means nobody is home. We're just under presupposition for you. You're just treated as chattel, as a thing. And so under the communistic plank, C.B. Cower's design is to collapse the family unit. And China, how much does it cost for you to pay tax on your home in China? You pay it once, I guess, and now you have your private land forever or something. You pay tax on a vehicle, apparently, or something, and you pay it once, and then you don't keep having to pay it all the time. In China, of course, you're not allowed to have more than one child, and all sorts of things has gone on there, isn't it? And Italy, isn't that a good example of a nation that's just been deserted? Does Italy have any younger people? No. Is that nation going to die? Yes. Why? Because you've got an aging population and it's got nothing to replace itself. Did We the People want that? And did We the People do that in Italy? No, you didn't. It was done to you. Just like all of the elder people were all put to death, given flu shots massively, and then given the Divock 91, So other Western nations, affordable where housing is and rent, no, it doesn't exist. It's skyrocketed. The value of that commodity, like we talked about, is the same as any other commodity and didn't rise in the same rate whatsoever. No, it didn't. It was monopolized. And why? Because it will keep you in debt. And can you do anything if you're in debt? No. Wow, what a good setup, eh? Not for you or I. So to not be feasible where you would be living more than to be 59 years of age, that's called ageism. It means it's going to be okay if you could live to be 59. We've got some technology, what have you, but, the average age is 59, so it's safe. In the 1960s, of course, you've got the typical American need for work, and they approximately work 2 or 3 years to be able to afford their house. And based on the median home price and things, the median family income at the time, and then, of course, onwards, you've got this communistic takeover by banking and C.B. Cower policy that collapses the rights everyone has. And now you don't have a house to live in. You're just a pry son or a pry daughter, and working your own self, and your money's just to collapse the family unit. And in the 80s, of course, the movement was to blame the father and to blame men for the woes of the world. That was feminism. And you'd study women's studies. If you went to university, many of the books that existed was really quite a lot in the library and bookstores about her health during this time. If you go to see if a section existed for men's health, it was zero. So propaganda was rife at the time, of course, because they'd use stats to say, hey, we've studied more men than we've studied women, but they wouldn't tell you they experimented on men in prison and men in the military. So that had not really happened to females. So today, you've got someone that's 3 years on average where the work is, and for a house you'd own it. But no, 50 years of slavery today, it's just not possible. You could see how children haven't been considered whatsoever. And in my own case, I saw how family abductions occur, and one parent could just take a child without the other's consent unlawfully and just ship them out of the state. And if you called anyone up to say anything about it, they say, tough shit. That's right. So there's no law and order. Look at the Franklin cover-up. How come you don't know about that? You can see the system takes children away, and you've got no charges, whichever anything was about that, just taken without any proper charges or anything. You don't think that's significant, and that's a larger portion. And what is it that's given to the child or given to a child's father? Where's the family unit? Busted, yes, to depopulate and to collapse law and order and to make sure asymmetric warfare would be so that, hey, these kids don't have a father, and isn't the father the one that probably would have said, wait a minute, maybe something else has existed here? And isn't it that a child should have a mother and a father? And isn't that their proper cup of tea? Don't tell me that you took their proper cup of tea away from them, their proper tea. It's a time frame, isn't it? Yes? And missing children, right? In America, you're not going to tell me that the system's corrupt. Not corrupt. It sure is. Most missing children involve runaways, fleeing perhaps difficult home lives and that sort of thing. And you've got family abductions too, like happened in my case. But traffickers exploiting those vulnerabilities and grooming the children so that they'll hate the ex, no matter how good the ex is. The ex is going to be ex all of life. And so mental health and peer pressure and factors like depression is quite enlarged. And factors like depression and negative friendship and the substance abuse, don't tell me that doesn't lead children to run or engage in risky behaviour. So in the United Kingdom, I think it's around about thinking 69,000 children reported missing in 2022 to 23. I mean, I looked at this, and from memory, I think Russia might have had some 33,000 children missing in 2003 alone. You've got overall missing persons in the numbers. India, I think, reports around 96,000 children missing annually. And this is reflecting issues that are populous in populous regions. So let's come back to the statistic in America, yeah? That's 460,000 missing children reported yearly, often driven by family abductions and runaways. Are you going to tell me that the court system that's locked lots of people up because they said they committed a crime which never was a crime, and that children were taken away from families for a condition which never was a crime? And so today, CBDs and these sorts of things are perfectly healthy where people are, but in the past you could have had your children taken away from you. I mean, don't you think you're owed compensation for such stupidity having gone on? What's the freestandingness where you see honour where a stranger is? And if you have no boundaries, you don't need what's felt omnipresent. That's transpersonal perception. This is something that's non-localized. It's decentralized. It's in you, it's in me, it's everywhere. So this is you, not the other way around. And intimacy is where you don't really have any boundaries. You're listening receptive to the other. And it's your total feeling of the depth of fragrance and things that you get from the story and everything. And it's your receptivity. It's the aromaticness of what's common sense, yes, and what is simple. So what are you settling for? Are you settling for a title, yes, of eye awareness where you are as a man or as a woman, or have you just settled for title conversion, meaning you're not a man, you're not a woman that has rights flow from that. You're a son of a purr, or you're a daughter of a purr. Look up in the Black's Law Dictionary and see what the definition of a son of a purr is. It definitely doesn't define anyone living. So where no boundary is, are you sure that it's certain that when boundaries are, that no lost intimacy has existed? Where the family court is ripping families apart and just disturbed everything, that we have such a large statistic of kids having run away or missing. Otherwise, where's the power? Where rapport is? And is this you without internal dialogue? And what comes earnestly more by your investigation of who you and I is in your in definition? Is it because you become aware of who is real in relation to what's just fictional only, as your all caps, which is an estate that's not you? So in eye awareness, being you and your original absolute self, you're the livingness where awareness is, and who is real versus what's fictional only. And so where you're in front of somebody and they give you information, is this in a 3D world? Yes, it is. And so if somebody's listening, are they just valuing something that was one-dimensional or two-dimensional because that gave them a subject bias? And so seeing that you're in front of them and you're the living witness and you're just dismissed because something was on the desk that somebody will just return to, and that is what actually is governing them, not anything that came out to investigate from you. If you come to be aware of what's investigated, of course, you realize that the absoluteness is more empty space, and this is your omnipresence. And to build a healthier connection and focusing on what your own actions are rather than others, it's the art of loving without clinging, and it's a caredness where distressed animals are and the like, and holding a ladybird gentle. Isn't this you letting experience be where life is without suffering from some attachedness? In eye awareness, it's you being absolute, unbounded, no borders, behind the back of your eyes, shoreless being, not controlled by belief or any outcome. And even what's pleasant or adversive, you're not of any expectation or even intrepid fear. It's just having no boundaries, none needed. You're living with no internal chatter. And it's a perfect detachment. And isn't this indifference otherwise, and isolation? And yet who's this living I? And isn't this great cosmic wheel of life? So having no boundary and needing your living where no internal chatter is, yes, perfect detachment is, isn't it? And isn't this indifference or isolation otherwise? Yet when you're living in I, it's a great cosmic wheel of life instead, and it's really looking at what's interdependent, where there really is no need, no emotional headache, and yet freedom achieved. It's engaging fully with life and love and goals without being controlled. So if you keep caring deeply and you're releasing the need for emotional control, nothing goes above a 2, where your emotion is. You've got a dial there down in your belly, and you only let something come up to a level of 2. Of course, emotions got a level that you could go up to 10 with, but why do you want to go up there? It's better just to keep it at a level of 2, and you've remained more meditative, ongoing, and outward-lived meditation of I. And it's a universal more response that you're getting back, allowing a response that's balanced and meditative and accepted reality, more maintaining inner peace and inside I awareness. It's really speaking so that you have understanding and not going through life having an idea that you're going to not understand something. So how can you understand anything after that? No, you can't. And it doesn't matter what somebody says. So what you do is to remain receptive and cause others to be in their receptivity. And isn't this you grokking more your own identity? It's engagement without mental gymnastics required. And that's only a deep past entanglement that would have been. So I awareness is you free of all of that state and in being instead, which is not a state, but being. It's a present where mystery is, and you're living in a full cosmology. And this is an investment in a perfect detachment, and it's a practice where listen speech is. And without being consumed or defined by any result, you see it's really a single action achieving multiple aims. So compassion is where you see a model and you're without any attachment, and the bank, otherwise that's plastered, of fear and the cloning is just a past clinging, isn't it? So if you see me staying sort of connected and empathic while letting go of the need for things and to be a certain way, isn't this better modelled more for you, and seeing the worth of what's a grand excellence? If you look at a model that's where your desire is given up and a father is modelling this for you in common sense and uncommon wisdom and modelling whole brain functioning and cell rejuvenation, which you could look into, it allows you evermore to have a desire without being controlled by any of it. So being in eye awareness is mystery. Keep that mystery, keep the unknown, because it's the gift of unwrapping the present. Otherwise, you're looking at this father in a practice of modelling for you. And where discussion is, how do you see self, and where are you letting go of things where it's not something that you could change? So it's really having intimacy where subject is, and you've got perfect detachment where things are otherwise. In eye awareness, of course, you're looking at a model of how to agree and also say no, you see. So you're looking at a model of deep learning where you let go of things, and it's not like you're controlling over what that is. It's really a moment of awareness where it's over perception, and you're looking over yourself, more omnipresent. So you look at yourself in all the places you've left yourself behind, and what's past is past, and what you could see that can never be got back is gone forever. And what wasn't anything that you could have had as any need, you're not beyond the mind. It should be that you are beyond your mind and not in any mental condition. There's no need for that, because bliss is achieved when you don't have that, just naturally. And if you weren't hungry except to be joined with good ideas, and there wasn't anything that satiated or quenched that passed your lips at all, it's something that's within you. It's what's skipped that's going to see, that's allowing you to see. And what happens where somebody no longer sort of eats any meals much, or they missing sleep and these sorts of things today? Is every act where sound is ever more transparent, you being bringing what's mattered to you? Isn't what's doing anything but itself, like money, fame, and validation? It just you where eye awareness can be modelled more, and a story ever more that's meant that means something to you. So after a year and a half following instruction, like for me at least, with Cloud 2 children, it was just sudden that eye awareness struck, and I could hear ever more deeply suddenly, and I was able to track more internal patterns. I continued to help my teacher for some time, and after that 4 years, I spent another 5 years or more. It gave me a lead to learn how to run Sweat Lodge and do fire walking, and to take people through experiential-based training where I taught people whole brain functioning, experiential-based sort of learning, and how important it is the vestibular sense is, which is a meta sense over the other senses, and how are you using the vestibular sense, which, like when you're associated, you're moving forward, you're bringing things within yourself, you're using direction more this way, you see. So I was to look at all of the senses and create the greatest taxonomy that the world's ever seen about our senses and how this is used in perception. So if emptiness more is nothing, and this is you, that in your absolute self, because I is emptiness, and everything then is sort of impressed upon this, you see. So it's the heart's path, which is a more soul depth, and never not you, more in timelessness, where the years have passed, perhaps even like minutes. It's a burnout where being attached would have been to some outcome, and that you would have cared for this, you see. And the Toltec teaching, which Cloud, 2 children, taught, and had the only teaching that I knew of, that was only one teaching, and that was about heaven and the definition of heaven, which is the space between 2 children playing. And so the teachings of the Rainbow Warrior, and this hit me very uniquely, and to live what I spoke and spoke what I live next. So what's made me reflective and more in eye awareness and see what's real versus what's made up, so that you could have memory and experience, you could have that let go, and you could follow a path of modeling change and in more perfect detachment, a more godlike approach to life. And listening and having speech which is coming from listened speech itself. Listening is what sculpts the listener to the inner interest, where inner rapport is, and speech coming more from the listener. And so it's directed from the listener. It comes out of your mouth. And so what's said is from the listener's speech toward you, what's inside already. And so when you speak and communicate, isn't this the response head that's communicated back to you? That's the effect of what's communicated. So communication is spoken. It's the response that you're getting back. And this might not be your intention per se. So focus in the lane where you are and stay centered more and have your own responsibility, feeling and need, and not interfering with anyone else's choice, and that you've got perfected detachment. And who's coming more from an empty center point? It's really wrapped simply with care, and this is the definition of I and am. So what I awareness is perfect detachment, and it's a focus of you returning and arriving, and not in some polarized condition of on and off, and having things end because you just left a relation and creating physical distance. It's really not ignoring or becoming aloof, but shutting down emotionally where you were, and that's not proper perfect detachment at all. So listening, yes, is listening with understanding. And so it's really listening with understanding that's perfect detachment. And so no interpretation. It's looking at a leaf fall outside the window. It's just a leaf falling outside the window. You look at somebody walk across the room, and it's just somebody walking across the room. You're not focused to put some interpretation on anything. And it's just really nothing, but isn't everything, where something is omnipresent. And it's your third party in your own self looking over things. And isn't this what predicates more your inner chatter, where you've been? If not, I mean, being empty where inner dialogue is, otherwise you've got a bit of a stooped mind, mind reading, and also polarizing, looking for what's obscure, what doesn't fit, having a lot of don't, won't, can't, should, try, but, must only, putting things toward another and using ad hominem, to blame others and this sort of thing, and chucking all the blame outside yourself. This is just so immature. It's incredible. In eye awareness, really, you've got a balance where your own referential index is and your orientation, and you've got a balance between internal and external in relation to these things, and being compassionate. That's not just you having indifference. So no mental internal dialogue is where any controlledness is of others, and you're focusing and shifting more to self-care and personal development, and you note a bigger picture that's an aptitude more for self-initiatedness, where you are your own partnering and your family team dynamic. And this is what motivates and gets you from an inner generated condition versus outside being pulled towards something or pushed. So the achievement, growing, learning and gaining acknowledgement is more motivating where you are in your growth and understanding. And this is what you could support. And that doesn't have to be any rescuing. So it's allowing others to face their own consequence, of course, while staying connected with compassion, and that's not indifference at all. So harmonious meditative eye awareness gives you a greater hemisphere synchronization, and it's you having capacity to have parasympathetic path where you're releasing growth hormone and brain-derived neurotropic factors, all crucial for your brain restoration and acting more like a fertilizer. And so promoting neural survival and growth and new connections at synapses, and it's essential for learning, memory, and having proper neoplastic condition. So whole brain functioning is preferred in the vestibular sense, in the direction that's used, and your integrated congruency and being associated, and not in limited mind function and stress where cortisol was, and it just raised calcium all the time. And you're not really in perfect detachment in life where things are like that, just eating heavy protein, fats and carbs and getting somatostatin released wrongfully that turns your stomach and pancreas off. Lots of people have that pattern. Might you look into live food and learn a little bit more about everything? But enzyme-resistant fats and having no hormone, no glucagon, no insulin present because you ate dead food and you've got minimal brain function after that, you've got less to not much any derived neurotropic factor, and it's linked to neurodegenerative disease. Yet while perfect detachment is more inner and meditative, and it's an exercise more of life food and natural boosting where your healing capacity is. So a conversation really is more objective where you're otherwise just really got a monologue, haven't you? Where you can't be interrupted because you know the response that you get back is the effect of your conversation. And many are very quick processing and they can't know what's being expressed before you finish. But what's the direction that's from what's positive, mutual, where a frame of meaningfulness is, and it's the context which is reframed more to make things meaningful and truthful, and this is more your mutual beneficialness, yes? And that's the definition of truth. So what's direct? What's said from what's positive mutually, yes? And the frame of meaningfulness and the context reframe that makes anything more truthful, of course, mutually beneficial. And who objects or interrupts does this from their own brain speed, of course, and processing things faster than maybe anybody speaking. And what's new information that comes in modifies the response, yet what's not allowed, you see, things are being controlled more big time, aren't they? So are you having a conversation and can someone interrupt you? They sure should be able to. Could someone object to something said? Yes, they should be able to. Should you be able to hold the place where you are and be able to manage what that is? Yes, you should. That's a proper dialogue. But where you're not able to do that, this is just really someone else's control freak stuff. How about stopping mind reading? God help us, that's the worst. Like, you think you could know what somebody else is thinking. It's like crazy. Also, if you don't know, there's 3 ways that you should respond. Maybe you listen to that tape. It's a good one. Otherwise, polarization has existed, isn't it? And do you know that may be your preferred mode of sorting information? That means you're only having lived in more limited mind functioning because of it. But to thrive and be champion in life and to thrive, it's a constant condition otherwise, which isn't about thriving, where you're just dissociated, distracted, interrogated and intimidated. That is a control freak stuff. So isn't that where somebody's craving peace and where you are in your mate's presence? Of course, what's totally not perfection, but is of a soft heart. It's a soft voice, and it's kind in its tone and mannerism, and rapport more is built familiarity. So it's an appreciation. Can you feel that more? Yes? And it's not you having any hidden agenda. It's feeling respected and rising up out of any slumber so that you could be gaining ever more better way to go about life. So if you've got a good balance in life and you're generous and virtuous, oh my God, yeah, but what if you don't have discernment? So you're generous and you're about virtuousness, but you just don't have any discernment. That's not going to be good. These 3 things all work together. Otherwise, you're just going to be taken advantage of. So in humbleness, it could be that you're just ignored and you let others know where your vulnerability is, you're being taken advantage of, and what's your kind and gentleness, you're just getting pushed around a lot. Having perseverance and persistence, you can otherwise get exploited. And if it's ruthless, you get respected. But if you show honesty, you'll get deceived and exploited. And if you show you're loyal, you'll just be taken advantage of. So being empathic, you're just going to get mocked. So having a quiet disposition, you look to where you've been talked over, for instance. So who isn't cared to understand? God help us, they're not going to understand, all right, until they make a decision. Wait a minute, I should understand more what somebody's saying, like the other side, and you can share what the view is of the other side, and you can say it perfectly so that they'll feel happy that you've understood what their view is. And now you're going to have agreement. Without that, you're not. And it's a reward otherwise sought and just approval. But because this is you more in your original self, and you do things because you don't want to be controlled what others are thinking, and to be upset by getting put down by others you don't think is disrespectful, but information. You could tell, of course, that who's in front of you is maybe really immature and is of totally poor judgment, and you're told that you're not, and this is you in your belovedness and beloved around you. So you have to come out of all of that as a lamb more. You're not getting angry in front of a wolf. That's not going to keep, waking you up properly. Disrespect, and where somebody's treated as a compass and not wounded, but you're walking away from what's unsupportive toward what's supportive. And in eye awareness, you've got perfect detachment and a state of totality, and it comes from your inner solitude. So it's this inner sense of your own freedom and peace that you are receptive to the things that's going on in your life, and you're achieving more a total engagedness where life is and beloved. And without emotional enslavement to any outcome, you're really able to remain where silence is, and you control your tongue. Otherwise, words create expression. And might you hear what the reply is where somebody hasn't really understood and chasing all but not picking any battles. It's really choosing life. And if you want peace, you've got to stop rushing, and you've got to come in smooth and finish and obtain everything. And what should be or can't or won't or don't, but always is the heaviest sort of mind that could carry all of that out. It's taken, and it's just somebody's internal dialogue that's messed up. So exposure to genius triggers somebody's threat detection typically, and that mechanism, and where someone's exposed to a genius, straight off the cuff, it triggers someone's threat detection, see? So they just don't want to be engaged or involved where that is, because maybe there's so many things that's so wrong about what they've done themselves, and so they just don't want to connect with anybody that would maybe correct anything about that. So the amygdala lights up and it shuts down anybody's frontal cortex in the left hemisphere, and it causes them to have limited mind function. So somebody feels threatened, they hide from who is present that has more intelligence, and they'll shut down who has more intelligence, and they're basically just regulating what they've got within themselves, and a belief and opinion, which is the lowest level of reasoning. So no accountability is, no real way to fact check where no understanding is. So empathy really is where you're living in others and where the world is crafted more inside them and requires a large protein. If your nervous system is to just stand by, it requires just a profound purpose to a larger mindset than yourself and your understanding. Otherwise, what's resisted just occupies enormous amounts of cortex and takes away wherever energy that you've got. So being not indifferent but perfectly detached, and you're not in any bias otherwise, you see, and this is eye awareness. Eye awareness is where you learn the most. It's a way of your being. It's not a state of mind, and it's having a freedom that's not compressed by craving or clinging, and recognizing life's impermanence and things. But it's more shown to you where suffering is ended and where you find inner peace, and it's releasing this dependence on external things and people or outcome. It's letting go your physical attachment to physical things and giving this up to the movement. You're remaining more in your perfect detachment. So looking and allowing where your full engagement is life without attachment to result. And it's fostering more an inner joy and clarity where you're being more in eye awareness. And so if you're living a spiritual life, you're in perfect detachment, and you've controlled things and not controlled by your possessions and being possessed, and you're performing duty and responsibility without claiming ownership, and the outcome is more your understanding and your true self. So if you imagine your outward lived meditation and it's an eye-aware state, this is not you separate from a body and a mind. It's like, what is the body and what is the mind? And are you a body and a mind? No, you're beyond a body and a mind. So finding this freedom through the spontaneous creative intelligence, and this is the one principle that's primary, and that is what? Just spontaneous creative intelligence. So isn't this how you're seen to be focused? And it's more selfless. It's like the cattail reed which flowers and always pointing to the heaven where it's collected. But you can look to see how those flowers are, how the stalks come up out of the mud, untouched by the mud and the surrounding water. No one could argue where loss of life isn't stopped, and none could pass over any act, of course, that's brutal. And the pattern of lackingness of empathy is totally unsupported, you see. So it's cruel to label or dehumanize, and it's also nothing is said but what's a matter of life and death from words used, and no care that's for you where brutality is. It's a lacking of some shownness on your part or anyone else's of actual proper care. So isn't mental illness that which makes you into something which you're not? Mental illness is just having made you consider that by fact or logic given another is to have some changed mind. If you're given appropriate fact, obviously it really does change the mind. And would this be clearing up mental illness where it is? And if we look at what's individual and you could think different, what's being social, you see? So confidence is listening where something is not egotistical, where where somebody is not being lifted up. An ego just tears everyone down and looks down their nose, and so most everybody feels pretty small after that. So truth given is mutually beneficial, and where the ego no longer is need to be heard or seen. So truth is not making less of self, but thinking less of self for sure, of course. Empathics is you walking away from disrespect, and given that emptiness, you give no charge to disrespect. And where you do what's extraordinary, of course, you're being prepared more. Otherwise, many just aren't going to understand. So if you live what you speak and speak what you live next, put things in terms of what someone else feels and thinks and perceives, now you're going to have more benefit. Somebody's going to be able to understand things. Otherwise, you're living simply that others can simply live, and random acts of kindness are generally left behind, all great acts. So where policy, where children are, and peony is, what's left behind that's a concern for children and family blood related. No care is for the voiceless, is it? Which it should be. No procedure is given you really, which it should be. And what's quite wicked to act in a way very callous. You'd ever in history sort of be on the wrong side otherwise of the story. It's a serious lack of ethic, and it's putting self up to have risked life and for a better world, but yet you'd be straight back to peony if you don't look at a usury-less currency and what a golden age really is and a new reset. So lacking accountability really is what's wrong and unknown, and blaming and shifting the blame and accountability and having poor communication skill. It's a deep lack of connecting to anyone to get any response back. So shouldn't our statespeople be really good communicators? Why not? You'd want the best. Why shouldn't you? Otherwise, pay attention, get the ideas and adopt these ideas, all right? So lacking empathic emotional intelligence, you're not going to be called insensitive, are you? You always are if you're giving your own model of the world, and you didn't know that. So every time you opened your mouth, just the same as me, don't tell anybody that I'm not giving you my own model of the world. I sure am, and you are too. So every time you speak, you're also giving your model. So evil really is where preferred mode is of being aloof, dissociating, interrogating someone, intimidating them, and using violence in the way that you partnered people. It's just off the chart wrong. So interrogativeness, where inner dialogue and actions are, and someone did that, and it's just to make your model or anyone else's smaller and inferior, it's violence. And to self, it's just an intimidation on your own self. When you give yourself to others, you can come to see that your hand that's taken, it's not your given heart, which it should be. It's wellness, which is in the self, exhausted, and all that you've given. And it's really like a mental illness that if you don't consider what's fact or logic, okay, it's this truth which is making less of self but thinking less of your own self. So when you give yourself to others, you could really come to see that it's your hand that's taken and not your given heart per se, but wellness is the self which is exhausted, of course, and your giving is to nourish where need is. And when the hand is stopped giving, it's bitten, and that none feel anything but what's begged where people doing that. So loyalty is disappeared. And could you say that you've had this experience? It's to protect you and your heart and where the model is of a value of your soul, and being handy where others are. When do you do too much for people they could have done for themselves, and you did that for them what they could do for themselves? It's really love more of your hand, but not your soul or your heart. So truth is really truth because it could be acted upon to be discovered as truth. And a lie believed is a lie. And the definition of truth is that which is mutually beneficial. So you can't see your face in muddy water. It's while truth really is a state of a gesticulated muddy want of aversion, and nobody can see after the fact of that state. You're not in a whole brain function condition, and nor is the listener unless you're able to gain rapport and bring on what you're saying and pace this with things you have inside. And so it's your heart's path in life and examining things more worthwhile for living. And what you regret is far more potent than what gratitude you have. It's how much that you are awoken more, and that you get more flowers than the living does. So when you're dead at the wake, many people get flowers, and they get a lot more than the living. So when this WEF leaders met in Davos, every single one went along with a scamdemic. Yes, they did. Did any of them speak anything popular? No. They told you it's the holder of a stake and not you. It's the holder of a stake. What bull dust? Borders, where the new Green Deal is, didn't all of those WEF go along with that? Didn't they also go along with carbon tax and things like that? Didn't they go along with the idea of weather engineering, geoengineering? Didn't they go along with trying to feed cows in a way that caused them to die by that feed? Is it because of value of your integrity and congruence? You could see the truth that makes you look bad because you're a farmer. Gosh, how bad is that? It's just crazy off the chart. Don't tell me that what's gone on to farmers isn't unpopular. It's truly unpopular. Nobody wants that. And so who wants that? They want food to be just chucked to the wind so it doesn't exist. That is dumb and stupid. And why isn't it that, things are on the up and up? It's because you've got a mass media that's just monopolized. So don't tell me you're going to receive the truth in any way under a monopoly. Look, to continue to uphold the past, you can't, because it's just war-mongered outright. So if you've no rose glasses and you're looking at people the way they are rather than how you want them to be, it's really you're the government, you and I, we the people. But otherwise, is it somebody else out there that forced those injections into the baby? And, you're going to get rid of most of them, but you leave 6? That's bull dust. Is that just because you're appeasing some monopoly? How do you see the court side of the government against parents' wishes? And would you be standing up for what's right, or you're the only one standing? It's that you could disappear yourself and your existence isn't of any value, but you could practice sort of being empty, where space is inside, not to judge anyone, but have come from emptiness. And before accusing anyone, you could have a gap inside yourself between the beats. And before you've reacted harshly to anyone, you've really got space inside before saying anything that you'd possibly regret. And so you learn to read others, and you learn to grow and trust and have integrity. And you're giving things because you really have honor, and you're doing things right. And where things are inconvenient to you, the truth being more important, it's staying hopeful, focused, where you're under pressure, and stay positive, that you keep, your team and people around you motivated. And your heart is a boat that's surrounded by fluid, and it doesn't let any of that in, because if it did, it's just like, you've rented space for fear, and that's just going to sink the ship. Haven't you got a spilling into your own self? And is this an integrity that you're still doing what's right? That nobody could be clapping. But who is telling you the argument that can't communicate really well? It's a lack of any accountability. So if you're lacking accountability, your advice, careful, isn't given, and it's not going to be under attack, or is it? Sure it is. If you lack accountability, your advice is carefully going to be considered an attack. It's to presuppose excellence, and you attract better. You can't keep with the same things to transform your habit. To think positive, you have to be consistent and hold your own involuted path. You could be in eye awareness and about more than a limitation. You could be unlimited. So practicing being mindful and, getting things done for the sake of itself versus, I'm doing it for the sake of something else. It's when you'd wash the dishes for the sake of itself, not washing them for some other reason. It's you're being mindful where you are in life. So where you love, and the greatest gift that you have is given where your presence is, and it's your presence in eye awareness is the greatest gift. This is love. And who do you say darling to? Isn't this the gift? Yes. Isn't this the present? And isn't this the outward lived, sitting, walking, sleeping, meditation? This is your being. It's not going to be turned on somewhere like some guru said, go somewhere and turn on. It's like meaning you're not going to be doing this where you are ongoing, which that's what meditation really is. So the color of light that stepped down into sound that's resonant, for instance, like with a 369 frequency, it all adds up to 3, 6, or 9. That's resonance, the sequence. And this is the universe. So a frequency like 111 adds up to 3, doesn't it? You've got this solfeggio frequency scale set specific where music tones are. You've got 174 hertz, you've got 285 hertz, you've got 396 hertz, you've got 417 hertz, 528 hertz, 639 hertz, 741 hertz, 852 hertz, 963 hertz. Guess what? They all add up to 3, 6, and 9. So you promote healing, and stress is relieved, and a spiritual awakening more is you've got 111, and then you've got 174, 258, 396, 417, 528, 639. They all add up to the digits that add up to a pattern of 3, 6, and 9, continuously repeated. So when did you learn about all of this? And if you are now just learning about it, oh my God, how good is this? You're going to be focused more in resonance. So eye awareness really is a superconscious state which you have in being, not having stuck with some inherited obstacle, and yet an ability you've got to go beyond prefix set patterns to be able to survive. So though you could be confined to theory, not fact, what's religious, cultural, or body politic awareness, that's not anything that just became expanded. Yet truth searched for and found comes from a rigid belief or theory. It's certain that eye awareness isn't from any certainty, and yet receptivity is to the unknown and mysterious, and perceived more beyond what's taught rigid boundaries. So recognizing I, who is unlimited from this spontaneous creative intelligence, you're realizing that many restrictions to being intimate where the subject is, it's only because of something you self-imposed. So the cell phone is designed as a jail tracking bracelet, isn't it? Isn't the cell phone a jail tracking bracelet? When you look at the cell phone, isn't that called a directed energy weapon? Are all the towers not also called directed energy weapons? Against who? Who made that? And what was the service for? And is that the service provider? Is that, or you and I? I'm pretty sure it's a service provider, bull dust, you see. You'd never agree to the way that tracking device is designed and for its purpose to be just emitting radio frequency that just isn't safe for you to have a bracelet on your leg or whatever. The budget to get a starved population, the budget to take every resource and pop it into fusion centres that some private bloke owns, a screwball. Isn't food not growing? And is what's far more profitable than your dignity, justice, isn't because of poverty, is cheaper to get? It's by ending where a journey is, you've seen the difference between what's passive reception and what's active comprehension. It's true listening, of course, which is transforming your perception and more your relation. And so it's relation in your world of understanding of the world. It's really about being fully present and unattached to an outcome and grounded in your own eye awareness and practicing living more an original self-balanced position, having compassion and discernment. So letting go of what you can't control and engage more fully with life than without attachment. See? So this perfect detachment is not indifference, but freedom and clarity and inner peace. So carrying awareness forward is listening deeply and speaking from response more and acting with integrity and modeling the presence for others, and your life becomes more meditation and interaction. And this is how you become seen. The teaching of being the observer and the participant and the listener and the doer. This is where true transformation begins.